because if a driverless car is a taxi, for example, and it's going to pick up a fare, then it would have to go to pick up the fare empty. And this is the point I think you're making, David. Some of these cars would actually be totally empty with nothing in them at all. Yeah, good point. I've not thought about that one. Okay, thanks, David. Steve's in Southend. Hi, Steve.
Hello, Steve. Sounds like an echo. Yeah. Long time no speak. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks. Good to talk to you again, Steve.
Goody. Right. Yeah, I mean, with your driverless car and my driverless car, they're absolutely wonderful. They've all got the best kit in the world, and they've all got the latest gadgetry, which to my mind is more things to go wrong. And when they go wrong with an electric driverless car or a petrol driverless car, it doesn't matter, who's going to be responsible for the accident when something goes wrong with it? Or another person goes wrong, wrong and it hits you. Who's responsible? The oldest passenger? The manufacturer? The person who bought the car? The factory that made it? Who is legally responsible? Because at the moment, it's the driver.
Yeah, and I mean, it was suggested earlier that perhaps it would be the owner of the vehicle would be responsible, but that would be very difficult to pursue in a court of law, because how could you be responsible for a crash if you're not controlling the thing?
Well, the point is, I mean, an 8-year-old kid can own a car, but under 10, you can't be charged with anything because you're under the age. So any 8-year-old child can own a car. It's so long as it's not classed as property, and or something like that, isn't it?
I don't know that rule. I've not even thought about that.
It's to do with children, youngsters, which used to be 21, now it's 18, I do believe. I might be wrong, but you're not allowed to own property, houses and things like that. You're not allowed. Under the law, I think it's something like the Young Persons Act or something. But I mean, would an 8-year-old be entitled to have his name on the logbook, for instance? But that's not proof of ownership, is it?
That'd have to check. There'd have to be a law change again, Steve, wouldn't there? All of these points, thanks, Steve. All of these points that you're raising this afternoon are great debating points, which proves to me that there's still a lot of work to do when it comes to getting these things out on the road and legal and insured and all the rest of the stuff. It's not too late to have your say. 0800 111 40 41 is my number. You can text, you can WhatsApp, however you want to get in touch. So far, by the way, the no's are beating the yeses, whether or not you would get into a driverless car. You can just cast a vote before the end of the programme, and I'll give you the tally before 6 o'clock. What's a buttercup? What's a buttercup got to do with butter as well? Other than if you hold it close to your chin, it's supposed to tell you that you like butter as it shines back.
I must say though, the Arnold and Rob's gardening exploits, the daffodils outside BBC SS14, very nice.
Beautiful.
Do you know those for a pinch? I'll take it home.
Yes. And Liana counts them every Sunday when she comes in for the cats. She counts every daffodil and tells me how many are open each week.
A bit of tally is she keeping. So she will notice if one goes missing.
Yes.
Okay, I won't go out there and pinch one.
Don't you dare.
Be in trouble, won't I? Lots happening today, Steve.
It was a very busy
Old show.
Very busy.
Have you been in a driverless vehicle before?
No. Well, I say no. I have on a fairground. Yeah, the roller coasters, they're driverless,
I suppose
and all the little all the little
I didn't
rides.
talk about them. The
But
teacups.
that's about it.
Well, talking of driverless things, TfL are warning tube passengers that there will be little or no service. You see what I did there, Steve? That's a segue and a half, isn't it?
That was very good.
Because tomorrow the RMT and ASLEF unions are set to conduct their latest walkout. Members of both unions are in dispute over job cuts, pensions and conditions. But TfL saying to expect disruption on TfL services, particularly on the London Underground. It says that the Elizabeth Line, Overground, DLR, trams and buses are likely to be busier than normal. So that is happening tomorrow. If you are happening to be travelling up to London for whatever reason, you might be going up there for.
And that's good news for me then, because I'm going to London tomorrow for a little day out.
I hope you're not planning on going on the tube.
I'm going on one specific tube, but that will not be affected by the strikes apparently, because it's the little the post train that runs
yes.
part of the Postal Museum. Been waiting to do this for ages, been booked for ages, and I have to get the bus instead of the tube when I want to get to Liverpool Street.
It's a good day out there.
It is a good day.
Very good day.
Very good day.
I went years ago. Very good. And also, talking of strikes, members of the National Union of Journalists are set to strike starting tomorrow morning. Those working across England for BBC Local will begin a 24-hour strike from 11 a.m. and that's tomorrow for 24 hours. Journalists in radio, TV and online will commence action a part of an ongoing dispute over BBC plans to cut local radio. Disruption may be possible tomorrow on local radio services across England.
Owen Ward, producer of The 79 Show, thank you very much for your help today. Also thanks to Jake on the phones. I shall leave you with one more song just ahead of the news at 6 from KC and the Sunshine Lounge.
activity is due to long-term sickness, and nearly a third in the northeast. I've been speaking to Jürgen Meyer, who's vice chair of the Northern Powerhouse Partnership and a former CEO of Siemens UK, about the scale of the problem facing business. But first, let's hear from Ben Houchen, the Conservative Mayor of Tees Valley, who was in to see the Chancellor earlier today. Ben Houchen, welcome. Now, a new Channel 4 poll tonight, Ben, showed that for the first time since 2019 on the economy, Red Wall voters trust the Labour Party at the moment more than the Conservatives. So there is a huge job for the Chancellor tomorrow, isn't there?
Yeah. Well, there is, and I think he's started on the right track given the policy statements he's already made since becoming Chancellor. We've seen that the economy's grown by 0.3%. We've seen employment numbers actually being quite strong. But to be fair, Andrew, you hit the nail on the head when it comes to the economically inactive, getting people back to work. These are things that all need to be tackled. And I think what we'll end up hearing from the Chancellor tomorrow is we've got the right plan, things are starting to move in the right direction. But the two key factors, one of which you've already touched on, being the economically inactive. How do we help people with childcare responsibilities, people over 50, the long-term sick? How do we help them get back into work to help grow the economy? And the second one that you haven't touched on yet, but I'm sure you were going to, is low business investment. And that's something that's plagued the whole of the country, but in particular the north of England as well. And I think we'll see a package of measures tomorrow that starts to address that. I don't think it's going to be an all glitzy, big bang, sexy budget, but I think we'll start to see the foundations being laid that we have a stronger economy and getting back to growth, because without any growth, you can't cut people's taxes, you can't do and deliver services that people want. And I think that's what we'll hear tomorrow, a very sensible budget that tries to tackle those two serious issues.
Ben, I know you saw the Chancellor earlier on today. If you want to leak any budget secrets, you're very, very welcome. I wonder, do you expect him to go ahead with the increase in corporation tax? Because there are quite a few of your colleagues, particularly at Westminster, who are really worried that that is going to stymie growth.
Well, I'll be completely frank. I didn't ask about corporation tax because as a parochial mayor, I was only concerned with the priorities of my area. I think the message I did take out of those from a national tax point of view that was very clear from the Chancellor is that you can only start to cut taxes if you have growth in the economy. We still need to address that sluggish issue. That's not a recent phenomenon. It's also, like you said, not just one that's addressed at an issue for the UK. This is affecting countries across the world. So I don't necessarily think we're going to see tax cuts. I'm hoping for some favourable news around fuel duty. Will they reverse on corporation tax? I don't know. But I think fundamentally we're going to have a very frank and honest conversation from the Chancellor tomorrow that says he would like to do that, but we've got to address these two issues first. Like I say, low business investment, getting people back to work, start to grow the economy. When we've got more flexibility, which we don't really have much of at the minute, then hopefully we can not just appease Conservative MPs, but the country by lowering taxes and lowering the burden on people across our fantastic Great Britain.
You quite rightly said that you were there to speak up for the people of your area. Let me ask about HS2. It was originally meant to connect central London with Manchester and people around you, and it's now going not to central London and not to Manchester. How much of a blow at the moment is that?
I mean, I'll be frank. I mean, I am on record as saying that HS2 is a waste of money, and I say that actually because I think objectively for the UK, that kind of money could be much better spent on other infrastructure that would have a better economic impact over the long term for the prosperity of the whole country, not just the north of England. But also, to be frank, it was a very Manchester-Birmingham-centric plan to connect to London, which is already very well served by public transport. If you look at the Tees Valley, for instance, or the whole of the northeast, HS2 was due to benefit us at some point in the 2040s, if we were lucky. And really the connection for HS2 that would have benefited the northeast in 20, 30 years' time was the connection from the northeast into Birmingham, which is very, very poor at the moment. So my view has always been scrap HS2, forward fund things like Northern Powerhouse Rail, because east-west connectivity is not good enough. So I would like to have seen that. And you'd still have change left over for other economic investment in the north of England as well. So I'm actually quite pleased to see it slow down. Whether that means, you know, there's a potential for cancellation in the future, who knows? But I think that's a sensible decision because there are much better things to spend public money on at this moment in time.
We had the blow up in the northeast with British Volt going under, that factory not going ahead. What is the single thing in your view the Chancellor could do tomorrow that would most help business investment into your area?
Well, from a very parochial point of view in the Tees Valley, we've been lobbying some time for the establishment of these investment zones, which seem to have been trailed in the press. The rumours are that they're going to be in tomorrow. I was speaking to the Chancellor to make sure that he does push ahead with them, because I was one of the architects of those designs under Liz Truss when I was working with Simon Clarke, who was the short-lived DULUC secretary, because I think actually those pro-growth areas but that are targeted areas that help left behind areas like Teesside and other parts in the north of England, can make a huge rebalancing for the country, but also add value to UK PLC as well. So we need to see some level of pro-growth policy in the Chancellor's speech tomorrow, but I don't necessarily think it will be the big bang, because we saw what happened if you go too big too soon with what Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng did last year.
The bang is too big in that circumstance, the economic bang. Ben, one other big issue is, I've been talking to some of your colleagues, and I know there's an awful lot of enthusiasm for directly elected mayors and corporations around the country getting more money directly from Whitehall to decide what to do with themselves, to spend themselves. Do you think you're going to get some money that you haven't had before, which you can actually use yourself?
Yes, and we will no doubt get something tomorrow, because government are a pro-devolution administration. I think we're hearing that there are some of these trailblazer devolution deals that are going to be piloted in the West Midlands and Greater Manchester. I really hope they come forward, because then very quickly we can fall in behind that and get more control. We have a lot of control already, but to be frank, Andrew, you also have this fundamental issue that the system, and this isn't a political issue, this is more of an officials issue, and it's certainly an issue that changes from department to department, that there is a huge resistance against giving away power from the centre. And what we're trying to do is demonstrate with the powers that we've been given, we can manage them maturely and sensibly, and that really leaves the civil service and the Sir Humphreys in Whitehall with no place to go but to allow us to have responsibility and control over our own lives, which I think many listeners would agree with.
Well, let's see. Let me return to that poll that I was mentioning at the start, because Labour is doing better in terms of getting its message over. Down in London, Rishi Sunak has been beetling around at lightning speed, addressing issue after issue after issue, and there's a general view in Westminster that he is doing better. But does he have the actual charisma? Does he have the reach for Red Wall voters that Boris Johnson did?
Well, yes, absolutely. But I would just take issue with the very first thing that you said there, is that I don't think the Labour Party are getting their message across actually in any way, shape or form. I think if we're frank, the Conservative Party keeps shooting itself in the foot repeatedly over the last 6 to 12 months. People are frustrated with the Conservative Party. Many feel annoyed and irritated that they don't feel like they can vote for us at the minute. But that doesn't mean that there is love for the Labour Party. And I do think there is a frustration that people do want to vote for us, but we're not giving them the reasons to be able to, because of the stupid mistakes that we've made over recent months. But this is why the Chancellor's speech tomorrow is so important, because he's shown that what he did in the autumn was the right thing. The economy's growing. That recession that was going to last 12, 18 months, 2 years has not come to pass. Employment numbers are holding, so we are on the right track. So we've got a long way to earn back that trust, but I absolutely take issue with the fact that the Labour Party are not a serious party, but unfortunately, many people lump the Conservative Party in the same bracket, so they kind of see us as both being as bad as each other.
Ben Houchen, thanks very much indeed for that. Really interesting. Thank you for joining me. Before I came on air, I spoke to Jürgen Meyer, who's the former chief executive of Siemens UK, who's now vice chair of the Northern Powerhouse Partnership. I asked him, how big a problem is that economically inactive group?
It is quite staggering, isn't it, that up to 25% of our adult population is not in work. And the biggest factor in that is indeed the amount of people that are on long-term sick. And all of the businesses that I speak to in the north and indeed up and down the country are saying, look, wouldn't it be great if we can get those people into our workplace? So, I think clearly solving issues around healthcare and also giving people an opportunity for better childcare facilities so that people can get into work more flexibly. All of those things I think would help our businesses and productivity.
And do you think that quite a lot of people will have stayed at home during the pandemic, maybe not become very sick, but thought, do you know what, I can work from home, my income's come down a bit, but life is better. I can go out, smell the flowers, observe the birds, feel the grass under my feet. I don't want to go back to commuting. I don't want to go back to the office. Isn't that a problem too?
Well, I think there are some people who, the work-life balance wasn't right, and I think for many of us, wasn't it? COVID was a bit of a wake-up moment that actually, as you say, you can go out and smell the flowers. But look, I think with the technology we have available, with people being able to work more flexibly, and at the end of the day, it's about creating jobs with purpose and with interest. And I think if people have jobs with interest and with purpose and they feel like they're being valued, they enjoy working and will be in the workplace.
Let me ask about a couple of the things that you've mentioned. First of all, childcare. It's very expensive by comparison with other countries and quite often very hard to get to. And it's been assessed that possibly 700,000 women would like to be at work but can't. How big an issue is that for you?
It's a huge, massive issue. And, and I hear it all of the time, and so yes, I think anything the Chancellor can do, and we've seen some of the information of what is likely to be announced. Look, it can't come soon enough, and I think we will be applauding it as a business community.
You're a big manufacturing guy. You were CEO of Siemens. What did you make of Michael Gove the other week saying Britain had to spend less attention on the city and more on old-fashioned industry and manufacturing?
Well, I massively applaud the language and the intent. And look, it links to what we were talking about earlier, which is we want to create jobs for people that really matter, better paid jobs, exciting jobs in the new green economy. The problem is that this government has been wholly inadequate in terms of really supporting us on a strategic industrial strategy. And look, we're expecting some more announcements tomorrow about investment zones, and it's all good, but it's also confusing. We've got investment zones, we've got free ports, we've got prosperity funds, and look, these things to your listeners are all very confusing. The problem is when they're confusing to the business community, because it doesn't actually mean that they feel confident to invest in these industries we're talking about.
And therefore they can't plan ahead either. Do you see anything more that you like on the Labour side? Are you seeing a kind of coherence in industrial strategy that's more attractive from them?
Well, I actually did a quick calculation of the investment zone money that is likely to be announced tomorrow, and I think it's going to equate to about 200 million of public sector support for these local industrial strategies. And you probably heard that the Labour Party last week announced 28 billion is what they would put up. The USA has put up something like 300 billion. So look, we are talking of different levels of magnitude.
Very interesting. Now, as a former CEO of Siemens, can I ask a straightforward question? Is the government doing enough at the moment to support big business?
The way I look at it is, will this budget tomorrow create more confidence for a large business to invest? And I think it will be yet another budget where there will be lots of bits and pieces, some new announcements, a little bit of tinkering around the edges, but nothing really substantial, like a really substantial industrial strategy around some key new technologies that would make me as investor say, this is the country where I'm going to put my many millions to build some more manufacturing.
And it looks as if the Chancellor is going to press ahead with the rise in corporation tax. Do you think that will stunt growth?
Well, the way I've always seen the relatively low corporation tax rate we have in the UK is almost like a little bit of a discount for the things that we don't do particularly well in the UK. We don't deliver the same transport systems we have of Europe.
full